Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday evening. It is the night before Friday. So hopefully you guys are doing well and, getting to a place where you can start to kind of breathe and all that kind of stuff and relax for the weekend. I know that I have a lot going on. I am making sure that I can see everybody's comments and all that good stuff. So let me get all the way set up because I want to make sure that if you're on my personal page or on this page, I'll be able to see what everybody's doing. So, hey, Dr. DeVille. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Teresa. How is everybody? So, while I'm waiting for folks to join, make sure that you say hi when you come in. I'm also going to be pulling up another article that I had up earlier today that I want to talk about a little bit. Just briefly, I already ranted once today, so hopefully you guys are well. Hey, Teresa. Hey, Shelba. Sorry about that. Hey. So listen, I have talked about some of these doctors before. And hey, Sam, how are you? Hey, Dr. DeVoe. So listen, I felt the need to come back around and talk about some of these physicians, given Alan Levine's interview with Phil Williams of News Channel 5 in Nashville, given some of the new mask mandates that we're seeing. Hey, Barbara, how are you? Following the interview that I did last week. If you did not catch, let me start by saying this. If you did not see last Thursday night's broadcast, we were really, really blessed to have Dr. Susan Johnson of Healthy Sprouts and House Calls, and as well as Dr. Nicole Curley McGuire from Louisiana. So one of those pediatricians was from Northeast Tennessee. The other one was from Louisiana, both experiencing, kind of rural areas and experiencing a lot of COVID issues. And they came on to share some of their expertise directly to you, some of the things that they're seeing in kids and with parents, and to answer some of the myths and things that we've been hearing about masks and about medications. And Dr. Johnson actually participated in one of the trials last year for the vaccine. It was one of the Pfizer trials. And so if you did not get to see that, make sure that you do go back and check out last Thursday's episode. All right. So, hey, Kathy Weeks Qualls. So having said that, I do want to dive in. I want to show several clips. One or two of them I've showed you before. Three of them I have not. And the reason why I want to talk about this is I am a little confused and frustrated with the lack of accountability that some of these physicians are being held to. It makes me upset. It makes me frustrated. It makes me angry to see physicians who, in my opinion, have become dangers to the communities that they took an oath to do no harm and to help. And that bothers me. It bothers me because it's something that we are seeing. And the other piece of it that bothers me is a claim by one of the state universities that one of the physicians who's also an assistant professor at this university, that her speech is protected because it's political speech. I do not believe that discussions around masks and a global pandemic is political speech. That has nothing to do with, candidates and Republicans and Democrats. I do not believe that a physician giving their medical opinion with regard to global pandemic, the efficacy of masks, and things like that, I do not believe that that's political speech. I do not believe that it should be protected. And I believe that this particular university is hiding behind that verbiage so that they don't have to stand up and take a stand. And that makes me angry. Hey, Almighty, how are you? I'm going to try to keep my passion level a little bit like calm today. But as y'all know, I get a little passionate about things when I believe that people are doing things that they know can cause harm to people, right? Hey, Melissa, how are you? Right, exactly, Kathy. This is medical. It is not political, but that's what, and I'm actually going to read to you part of a response from East Tennessee State University with regard to Dr. Ginger Carter. Now, you all have heard me say one of three physicians, you've heard me talk about them over the last several weeks. You've heard me talk about Dr. Ginger Carter, who is an OBGYN in Johnson City, Tennessee, with privileges at Ballad Health at Franklin Woods Hospital, who also sits on the Johnson City Board of Education. You've heard me also speak about Dr. Denise Sibley, who is an independent physician, but whose husband also works for Ballad Health in pathology, has a sizable contract with them, with their labs, and who is an internal medicine doctor, who is part of this Tennessee Stands Freedom Matters tour. And we're going to take a look at some of the things that she has been saying. And then in addition to that, you've heard me talk about Dr. Sean Oceanbine, and you've heard me talk about him fairly in depth. And I showed you some clips, but I want to show you a clip tonight from him that I have not previously shown you. And I want to talk about what happens when physicians, people that we are supposed to be able to trust, people who are supposed to be able to put aside their political and personal opinions and just simply state facts based on medicine and data from credible, reliable, trusted sources, not random ass YouTube links and QAnon conspiracy theories or any of that stuff, right? And I want to talk about what happens when they become dangerous, and how do we make sure that these individuals are held accountable, and what does that even look like, right? So I want to talk about all of those things tonight. And then, as just a little icing on the cake, I want to talk about Johnson City Freedom. Apparently, there's a Facebook group called Johnson City Freedom, and it was founded by, what's your name, lady? Danielle Goodrich. Danielle, you have earned a cameo. You have earned a spot in tonight's live, even though you are not a physician. But I'm going to talk about you, ma'am, and I'm going to talk about an interview that you gave and some statements that you made that I believe are problematic and indicative of some of the correlations between anti-maskers, anti-vaccine people, anti-critical race theory people, and just flat out racist people, right? So we're going to talk about this seeming like connection to all of these things. And I believe it's because they've all been politicized, right? When in reality, they're not political issues, right? They are real issues that affect people and our health and well-being. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you, where should I start? I want to start with Dr. Denise Sibley, who is an internal medicine physician. And I'm not going to play her entire interview. I'll put a link up to it if you want. But I will share with you kind of what she says. And I'm going to play this clip because it's this clip that really bothers me. The rest of it, I don't understand why she can't use her common sense and her experience as a medical physician to not understand why these things happened. But she gave an interview, one of several, in March of 2020, when COVID was really first kind of like, we were first getting our doses of it, right? We were first realizing, holy crap, we've got this novel coronavirus and it's an issue. And she did this interview because she had done a Johnson City Freedom Stands, Freedom, whatever, where they were talking about how, they didn't want their liberties and their freedoms taken because they were being told to wear a mask. And this is what she says. She says that her daughter lives in France, and that so she had been kind of privy to and kind of wondering what was up with COVID prior to it hitting the US, because it had already hit Paris. It had already hit France. And she was, of course, she didn't know what it was going to be like. So she was, kind of watching things and reading some of the reports and seeing how it was being treated in these early stages. And of course, she mentions hydroxychloroquine. If you go to her website, she gives you 3 treatments from COVID, where she promotes these drugs that study after study after study, reputable study has said, don't use these drugs because it's not proven that they're effective. And she tells this very, very alarming conspiracy theory type story about how she had these 2 older patients that came to her when they got COVID initially in March of 2020. And she was going to prescribe, okay, Sam, sounds good. She was going to prescribe hydroxychloroquine to these 2 patients. And when she went to 2 pharmacies, she wasn't allowed to prescribe this drug for COVID because they asked, like, what's the diagnosis for that you're going to be treating? And she goes on to say, I've given this prescription for this drug a bajillion times over 30 some years, and it's a $6 drug. Now, in another interview, she says it's a $10 drug. So I'm not really sure if it's $6 or $10, but I think the message she's trying to communicate is that it's not an expensive medication. I think that's what she's trying to communicate. And she says, this is the first time that my profession, I wasn't allowed to prescribe a drug that I've prescribed many, many times before for people with rheumatoid issues, people with malaria, for mission trips, and all of these types of things. And here's the first thing that I would say to that: just using my normal common sense, looking at credible data, and having talked to other physicians, here is my understanding. And I know there are medical personnel on here, so feel free to chime in if I miss anything, if I get something wrong, or if you have something to add. Because this is my understanding, is that in March 2020, one of the reasons that they stopped allowing hydroxychloroquine to be prescribed for the treatment of COVID, besides the fact that there was no conclusive data that it was actually successful in treating the disease, was that people who actually needed it, the folks with rheumatoid arthritis, with rheumatoid issues, who really, really needed this medication, couldn't get it because it was a cheap drug. And because it was being prescribed by COVID, and people were sending out all this information that here's a cheap fix for your COVID worries, it was being prescribed in large volume amounts, which was causing problems for people with real medical issues that this drug had been proven to treat. So why Dr. Denise Sibley doesn't understand that, because it makes sense to me. I mean, I know I'm not an internal medicine doctor, but I'd like to think I'm kind of smart, right? To me, that makes logical sense. So let me just ask you all who are watching, would it make sense to you if you were a doctor going to prescribe a drug for a disease that it had not been proven to treat, and the prescription of this drug in such high volumes was causing a shortage for other people with conditions who absolutely need this drug? It makes sense to me that, pharmacy people would say, no, you can't do that. We need to not do this because we don't want to hurt these people for a hope of something that had not been proven. Does that make sense to everyone else? Because it makes sense to me. Now, Denise goes on to say that this is some sort of conspiracy theory and she doesn't get it, right? This is the first time she'd ever seen her profession behave in this manner. And she wasn't really sure what to make of it and all of this secrecy. And she says some other things that are really disconcerting to me, and I'm going to play a clip for you now, okay? So here's what she says.
I was with for lunch today has had over 1,500.
Oh, wait, let me go back. I was watching it because I couldn't believe she said it. So here we go.
And I just have not seen the incredible fatality that they are talking about. I know no one who's died of.
Can I stop it right there for just a second? I have played that one part of this clip at least 5 times. Because what I see on her face, now granted, this is March 2020, right? But what I see on her face, you can't hear it, Jamie? Shit, it was bad volume on the video that I took it from. But here's what she says. She says in this clip that she has not seen the fatality rate that they talk about. And what I see on her face is a freaking smirk. Like, that's what I see. Tell me. I'm going to play it again. Tell me if you can hear it, number one, and B, if you see on her face what I see on her face.
And I just have not seen the incredible fatality that they are talking about. I know no one who's died of COVID. One of the physicians I was with for lunch today has had over 1,500 encounters, and he's had no one die of COVID either, but he has had someone die of a brown recluse spider, which I've never had anything die of that. So how random is that? But that's to say that 99.97% of Tennesseans are never going to die of COVID.
So she is telling you that you're more likely to die of, all of these other things, and that this mortality rate that everybody talks about really isn't important. Jamie, can you tell me, can you hear it? Could you hear it better that time? Because I turned it up as far as I could. But then she goes on to talk about, yeah, she's smirking. Right, she's smirking. Thank you. I'm glad, because when I watched it, I was like, why is she smirking about fatalities? But listen to what she goes on to say about masks wearing. Listen to what she says.
The death rate as of yesterday, when I did the data last night, the death rate in Tennessee is 0.032%. And that matches many other mortality rates. There's suicide, there's motor vehicle occupancy death rate, there's many other things. Actually, it's 3 times as likely that you'll die an accidental death in Tennessee, and those are 2017 data because they have not updated them since. But there are just so many things that seem to be to have a narrative behind them, and I don't see my profession acting scientific. I also see that much information is suppressed, and I've never seen that.
So this again. So now let me ask you this, because Dr. DeVoe, you're on here, right? She says that she didn't see her profession behaving scientifically, and that in fact what she saw was a lot of information suppressed. Let me know if that's what you see in that, what you were seeing in your profession at about that time. Because I get the fact that it was March in 2020, but that's one of my problems with this, is she's stating these things as if they couldn't possibly be true. She's smirking about them and insinuating doubt and some conspiracy and suppression of evidence very early on, before we really even knew. And that's one of my other problems. So it's one thing. And the thing is, she's still saying the same stuff today. She's still going on tours. She's still saying these same things, even after over 2,000 people in her region have died of COVID-related deaths, right? So here's we go. Data was available through several sources, including the CDC, the Tennessee Department of Health, et cetera. Right. What she's saying is data was suppressed, right? Agreed, Jamie. She's speaking as an expert on something that she's not an expert on. Now, here's the other part, and I would love to hear other medical people's opinion about her making this statement regarding masks. Here we go.
We've always welcomed debate in medicine and welcomed questioning. That's what the scientific method is. But all of a sudden, contrarian opinions are shut down, and that's concerning to me. I try to take care of people. I have all my life, and it distresses me that we are being forced to have mandates that make no scientific sense. Cloth masks increase your risk of disease, not decrease.
Okay, stop right there. She said that wearing masks, that it's not scientific based to have a mask mandate, and that wearing a mask increases your risk of disease, not decreases it. I just want to play that little snippet again.
Of disease, not decrease.
Whoop, hold on.
No scientific sense. Cloth masks
Here we go.
Increase your risk of disease, not decrease. There is no scientific evidence. And if you look at pre-COVID evidence, post-COVID evidence is suspect. But pre-COVID evidence, go look it up. There's no evidence for stopping a respiratory virus with a mask in a community setting.
So here, there is no scientific evidence for stopping a respiratory illness with a mask in a community setting. That's what she said. And that wearing a mask actually increases your chance of infection rather than decreases it. So when I hear that, what I hear is an irresponsible physician who is publicly giving medical advice and medical information to people. She is telling them that data that has come out since COVID is suspect and not to be trusted, right? And I have a problem with this as a physician. I have a problem with her not being held accountable for the things that she is saying publicly. And this is not, in my opinion, political speech. I don't hear anything about politics in what she just said. I don't hear anything about politics, infection rates, viral transmission rates, efficacy of masks. None of that has anything to do with your damn politics. None of it. And this is what I mean by when doctors become dangerous. Because this is what I believe has happened. And she is not the only one. Next, And you can find her talking about all of this in a lot of different places. My personal opinion is I would like to see the FSMB actually do what they say. So if you saw the FSMB put out a statement, and this is what they said. They said physicians who generate and spread COVID-19 vaccine misinformation or disinformation are risking disciplinary action by state medical boards, including the suspension or revocation of their medical license. Due to their specialized knowledge and training, licensed physicians possess a high degree of public trust and therefore have a powerful platform in society, whether they recognize it or not. They also have an ethical and professional responsibility to practice medicine in the best interest of their patients and must share information that is factual, scientifically grounded, and consensus driven for the betterment of the public health. Spreading inaccurate COVID-19 vaccine information contradicts that responsibility, threatens to further erode public trust in the medical profession, and puts all patients at risk, end quote. In my opinion, the three physicians that I'm going to show you clips of words coming out of their own mouths are doing exactly this and need to be held accountable. So I'm going to keep going. All right. So next, I'm going to play for you three separate clips from Johnson City School System's Board of Education meetings. The first clip is from earlier in August when they first were talking about whether or not there was going to be a mask mandate. And this is the clip that really pissed me off. And I did this impromptu live and I was really mad about Ginger Carter, and I still am. She really makes me have a very intense reaction to her. Because of the things that she says and the way that she says them. So I'm going to share that clip with you next. And then I'm going to follow it up with a response that I love from another one of her board members that kind of undercuts. It throws a little bit of shade Ginger's way. And I want to show both of those clips to you before moving on to this last one from her. And then I'm going to actually tell you what ETSU's Dean, Dr. William Block, I'm going to tell you what his response was about the things that Ginger Carter said. Okay, here we go.
With, of course, Governor Lee and
Dr. Carter, you had something.
Well, and I'm glad Dr. Barnett brought up the press conference with, of course, Governor Lee and the Speaker of the House, Representative Sexton. But I did want to say, because I think it's important, and obviously many in the community have emailed or they've come to speak. And it is confusing. You know, there is conflicting data. I think one of the speakers even mentioned that. Like I woke up this morning and a local, in the tri-state area, pulmonologist had sent 47 studies confirmed the ineffectiveness of masks and 32, the negative health effects. So you can find this, but what I wanted to say too, we wake up every morning and the CDC has a new set of guidelines and it's very confusing. And, the recent set of guidelines was from some, study that was rejected in peer review. And so the board hears what the public hears. We wake up and we hear what the CDC says. We wake up and hear what the American Academy of Peds says, but we also need to ask questions. I mean, who funds American Academy of Pediatrics? Pfizer puts a lot of money into that.
I want to stop right there. When she says that the American Academy of Pediatrics is funded by Pfizer, that they put a lot of money into that. It took me all of 5 minutes to get on Google, do a couple of searches, and figure out where that came from. That came from, well, let me just say this. Dr. Ginger Carter is an OBGYN. She has privileges at Franklin Woods, which is Ballad Health Hospital. And they like to split hairs and say she's not directly employed by Ballad. She has a contract, right? She has privileges at your facility. So yes, she's on your website. She's yours, right? I'm gonna need you to we're not splitting hairs. So, but that's who she is. And it took me 5 minutes to figure out where that statement came from. And here's where it came from. There was a social media post that was going around saying from the AAP's website, where it says that, Pfizer was a sponsor for AAP. Here's the thing. It was for a specific program, a specific grant program that ran from 2017 to June of this year. And Pfizer only donated $150,000 specifically for that one community outreach program. They are not a huge founder or sponsor of AAP. And as a matter of fact, on my site, on my page, I put the link where they very transparently show you who their top corporate partners are. They show you who their top donors are. And, spoiler alert, it's not Pfizer. But I will let her continue spewing this information or this information.
I just think I'm saying this too to say that I feel like it is sort of a sad time to be in medicine because
Think it out.
And I think everybody is intelligent and you have people that line up on both sides. But I think it's digging in these questions as to why. And I'll even say this to go as far as locally is, the headlines on our newspapers or on the local TV stations and all the warnings from Ballad. And my question to them is, well, you are sponsoring an Alabama concert at the Bristol Motor Speedway on August the 14th. These messages cause the confusion in the community, and the board hears those same things. And I think it's, like I said, we don't have any special information that you guys have. So all that data, studies, everything's the same. I think it's just time, for us to dig a little bit, ask those questions. Why is this? Why do we get so much conflicting data? And I'm so glad that Representative Sexton and Governor Lee said that, because I do feel like that is parents' choice, because parents, have, although I feel like all of us care about the children in this community, nobody cares about a child more than the parent. So I just wanted to say that, some people are not going to be happy with this mask optional, and some people are going to be happy. But let's just, do what's best for our kids. I want our kids to be in school, and I just cannot forget about the learning loss and the mental health effect.
So did you hear that? She said, I cannot forget about the learning loss and the mental health effect. So stopping right there, I want to play for you this next video from one of her board member peers and listen to what was said next.
Learning loss this year, Dr. Barnett.
Okay, listen.
Board, if you have any additional questions, I'll be glad to answer.
I do have some additional questions. I do have a question about our learning loss this year. Have we seen dramatic learning loss this year, Dr. Barnett?
We will have a report on that. We have seen not nearly the learning loss that the state reported today.
Okay, I can play the whole rest of what he says, but it's all about like when the report will be available and all of that. Here's what you hear. She is following up with Ginger Carter saying, oh, I just cannot forget about the learning loss and the mental health effects of children wearing masks. And, we want them in school, right? Because that's their whole thing is what about learning loss? And so immediately this board member comes back and says, hey, have we had significant learning loss? Like, since she's so concerned and that seems to be like this main issue. And what does he say? No, we have not. So your argument is mute. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Now, I've talked about this before, but I really do feel like it's important. Okay. The AMA, the American Medical Association, has a code of ethics. And here's what that code of ethics states. It says, and I quote, the ethics on physicians in non-clinical roles. So listen, as a member of the Board of Education, Dr. Ginger Carter, that is a non-clinical role. Here's what it says about the ethics of physicians in non-clinical roles. Quote, the ethical obligations of physicians are not suspended when a physician assumes a position that's not directly involved in patient care. Rather, these obligations are binding on physicians in non-clinical roles to the extent that they rely on their medical training, their experience and perspective. When physicians make decisions like whether or not there should be a mask mandate in the middle of a global pandemic in non-clinical roles, they should strive to protect the health of individuals and communities. I did not hear anyone striving. I did not hear Dr. Ginger Carter striving to protect the health of individuals and communities. Now, another interesting fact, she is an assistant professor at East Tennessee State University. So ETSU is a state-funded institution, okay? So absolutely, political speech, her views politically are protected, okay? But just because a politician shares her views on something doesn't make that view a political view. It can be a medical view that you both have the same opinion on. Yeah, am I making sense? Are y'all with me? Right? So here's what the ETSU faculty handbook says when you make public statements. So here's what it says, and I quote, when the faculty member speaks or writes as a citizen, he or she should be free from university, college censorship or discipline, but his or her special position in the community imposes special obligations. As a man or woman of learning and an educational officer, he or she should remember that the public may judge the profession and the university/college by the faculty members' utterances. In other words, they're going to hold us accountable for what you say. And then they said, hence, a faculty member should at all times be accurate, should exercise appropriate restraint, should show respect for the opinions of others, and should make every effort to indicate that he or she does not speak for the university or college. Nowhere in her statements did she make sure that people knew that she did not represent ETSU, but it's apparent that she doesn't. You want to know why? Because ETSU has issued their own mask mandate, right? So your employer, ma'am, right? The ETSU has their own mask mandate. And you are saying no, and you're saying it should be parents' choice. So this is the other part that just really pisses me off. Having children, being a guardian, being labeled a parent does not make you a good parent, does not make you an intelligent parent, does not make you a well-informed parent, does not make you a responsible parent, and it doesn't make you a bad parent, right? But when you disregard the expert advice of physicians, right? And the next clip I'm going to play, she talks about getting second opinions from your doctors. But you guys have gotten letters from pediatricians in the area. You've gotten letters from Ballad Health. You've gotten letters from physicians who are saying these children should have masks on. So that's already your second opinion. So like in the case of a global pandemic, a parent's opinion based on some YouTube videos and some non-credible links from whoever do not outweigh the second opinions, second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions of medical experts and health officials at the highest levels and right there in the region. These pediatricians are the people caring for your children, period. So Marion Gave You Grace says, I told my kids at the beginning of this, you know who wears masks? Superheroes. I love this. You are superheroes against germs to keep others safe. My kids have learned empathy and easily adapted to wearing masks. Yeah, as riled up as my grandbaby Bella is, as like frantic and like whatever, she wears hers with no issue. But of course, I also believe that children, especially younger children who are at an age where they can't get vaccinated, they oftentimes take on the views of their parents. And so how we present the information to them is going to determine how they view that information, right? When we talk about the mental health of children from last year, okay, and this is just my opinion, I don't think that masks are what caused the mental health and angst and suicidal ideation that kids had last year. I think it had to do with, experiencing a global pandemic, some children missing out on their senior years and no proms and, distance learning, and not to mention the insanely hostile political climate around social justice issues, around, the election last year. Like, this country has been a big bag of hate, attack, and distrust for a good number of years now, right? So to say that we're going to bring in our children's mental health over masks, I think is just BS, right? I really do. When we weigh everything that our children are dealing with, that is going to be potentially the factor for their mental health, I just don't believe that it's masks. I just don't. But let me go ahead and continue. East Tennessee State. Well, first let me play this last clip. So the Johnson City's Board of Education met again last Friday, and there was a lot said in that whole meeting. Yes, they have. He says, so wait a minute. Parents who had trouble becoming the teacher last year have become doctors. Correct. Yes. And I mean, it's just like, so you guys do realize that when you as a parent take your child to the doctor, and the doctor says this child needs A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, and the child doesn't get those measures in terms of protection, in terms of, being provided for or whatever, then those physicians have the ability to turn those parents in for not doing the right thing by those children for their health and well-being, period. Right? Yeah. So Molly Worley says, how much does a mask protect our kids when most of the school doesn't wear them? And that's what we're going to address in this next clip. That would be faculty and students. My grandchildren wear them. The majority in their school do not. So how long it will be before you think they have COVID? Probably not long, right? Probably not long. I think I heard today that 500 students in Washington County, Tennessee have either tested positive or been quarantined or whatever. But so listen to this next clip. This is from last Friday for their special session that they had.
And we want to create as many layers to keep our kids safe as possible. And I want to thank all of our committee members who have reached out to all of us via phone, email, and text. It was a lot of emails, and we appreciate it. I'm really thankful that we have a community that
this is not Ginger Carter. This is her other board member in the pink.
And I'm proud of that. The first statement in our code of conduct says that I will at all times think in terms of children first, always determining other important things according to how they affect the education of children. And I think
So did you hear that? The very first statement in the code of ethics is I will always put children first. Are they putting children first? I don't think that they are.
Everybody here wants children first. So I think that can mean a lot of things. That can mean that we make sure we have HVAC upgrades. It can mean we have qualified teachers. But tonight it means, what are we doing to protect our children in the face of a health crisis? And most people are here because of masks. That's the question. I've had over 100 emails. I have a stack of emails here. These are the emails of people who would like to have mask mandates. These are the emails of people who would not like to have mask mandates.
And you hear the crowd go, well, where are they? Well, where are they? If they want masks, they're at home, because they know Young just showed up to the Board of Education not wearing masks, and they don't want to get COVID. That's where they are. They are at home, having expressed their opinions via email where it is safe, and they have kept their asses at home so that you non-maskers don't give them COVID. That's where they are. And then you wonder why children are being bullied at school. It's because their parents are bullying people at the Board of Education meetings. It's not hard, people. Apples and trees.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Hager.
This is a public meeting.
He talks too slow for me. I have to go past it. There's another part. Let me see if I can get to it.
Walking into this.
Here we go.
For a second to that.
I'm willing to take the heat. I think the kids are worth it.
I like her. Listen to what she says. Hold on.
It's not popular. It's clear. Building. The local health system has asked us to require masks indoors.
This is important. Listen.
Indoor events and any indoor events students are required to attend. Milligan College is requiring masks inside building. ETSU is requiring masks inside building. The local health system has asked us to require masks indoors. Other area doctors have asked us to do that. Masks are one layer in the prevention of COVID.
Correct.
But masks work best when everyone is wearing them. We should put our children first and require all people in our building to wear masks. Protecting children and families and doing everything we can to keep our kids in school is what we need to do. It's not popular, it's clear. We may have the state legislature after us, but I really appreciated the quote in the paper by longtime Greenville City School Board member
Listen.
and surgeon, Dr. Mark Patterson, that said, I understand the political pressure on you, but remember the health and well-being of our children is your responsibility. Don't abdicate that. Kids are first. Their health and well-being is our responsibility as board members. Be willing to take the heat for those that you are in charge of. I'm willing to take the heat. I think the kids are worth it. I motion that we require masks for all people in all of our buildings.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I think
Here she comes.
I would echo what Beth said about the communication from the community. And there are a lot of emails, but I would also say if it was like to say one was over the other for emails, I think walking into the schools has demonstrated what parents have chosen. And although...
Now, I just want you to understand what this physician is saying. She is saying, yes, we had emails from our local health system, which just happens to be the medical monopoly that has told us that another round of COVID may cripple us, right? We have received emails from pediatric groups. We have received emails from, other universities. We have gotten all of these emails from these professionals who are medical professionals who treat your children, who understand the science, who have access to the journals and the reports and the data. But listen, guys, those emails are not as important because we walk into the school, the parents, their kids aren't wearing masks. Listen, when you walk into the school, kids are showing up in spaghetti straps and skirts that are more than 3 inches above the knee and pants sagging down to their ass. Their parents chose to let them come to school that way. Is that okay? Can we just throw out the dress code now? Since you guys can't enforce mask mandates and parents know best. So if a parent wants to let their child come to school dressed in that fashion, that's okay? Is that more important than the overall environment that children are learning in? And by the way, spaghetti straps and skirts and stuff, that's just sexist BS. I don't stand behind it. I'm just making a comparison. Okay, but here she goes. I'm going to let her continue.
But if you would, it is not a decision for me about pressure, politics, or anything. It's a decision that I think that parents are the people to make decisions for their children. And just wait. And now we are so far into COVID. I mean, we're 18 months into it. And I think at first everyone was, doing whatever we can. But there is data on, for if you show me this study, somebody shows me another study, and we got presented with a lot of things. So there are studies that masks are ineffective. There are studies that think they are effective.
But are they reputable studies? This is what pisses me off, right? I could go outside, survey some random ass people, put some things together and throw up a study. That does not make my study that I've done and thrown up on YouTube or a study that I've done. So listen, Dr. Johnson did a perfect example of explaining this the other night. She talked about how some of the studies that have been done with regard to different medications and whatever, she talked about whether it was in vitro or there's another word for it, like once it gets into the body, right? And she was talking about how some of these studies that looked really promising in the lab when it was in vitro did not correlate to when the virus was in the body. And so I think it's really important that, and this is what makes me angry about her as a physician. And this is why I believe, and it is my opinion, that Dr. Ginger Carter is a dangerous doctor. It is dangerous to spew misinformation like this concerning the efficacy of masks when everyone knows. I mean, why have physicians and doctors worn masks for decades upon decades upon decades? Because they do work. But they do work best when everyone wears them. They do work best when everyone wears them properly. They do work best when in certain situations. And we're not talking about 24/7. We're saying when you cannot properly social. Thank you, in vivo. Yay! Thank you, in vivo. I know I said in vitro. Thank you. You always got my back because I get like going and I mispronounce that. But so yes, in vivo. And so this is my point. This is when it becomes dangerous as a physician to spit this information out of your mouth. I'm going to continue with her real quick, and then I want to play one more clip, and then I have a response from ETSU that I want to share with you from Dr. William Block. Surely by now he's watching, or someone who's telling him what I'm saying is watching. And then I'm gonna read to you a letter that was sent to me that is just really good stuff. And a friend of mine does a lot of legal research around issues. Just a phenomenal individual, and sends me like little legal tidbits every now and again. And there's been a lot of legal talk about whether mandatory vaccinations by universities and by healthcare systems are legal. And I'm going to share with you a legal opinion kind of about this. And so far, all of the district courts have upheld that it is constitutional to require them. But here we go.
Like I said, I've had pulmonologists and other doctors, but I think the question is the child's doctor and the child's parent. And
okay.
So although
their child's doctors have already said wear masks. The majority of the pediatricians signed a big old long letter. Y'all saw that, right? Y'all saw the long letter that a bunch of the pediatricians put out and they signed. I can tell you that Dr. Johnson had signed it. I can tell you that Dr. Sarah Youssef, who was my grandbaby's pediatrician, she signed it. And these are folks that are balanced, that are reasonable, that are just good data, medically sound individuals to listen to. I listen to her and immediately my bullshit radar goes up because she gives no facts. She just spews out things. Oh, well, you can get conflicting data. She keeps talking about who this pulmonologist is. I swear. So listen, one of y'all should FOIA her emails. Because listen, her emails, both of her emails at East Tennessee State University, her email there is open to the public. You can FOIA her emails. Be specific, right? Ask for any of her emails with regard to COVID-19. And they have to turn them over to you. And all of that information would be important. I would love to see what else she is telling people, because I have an email that she sent. I have an email where she sent these non-credible links to a parent and talking about all of this misinformation. So I'm just saying, yeah, right. I got it. I'm done talking about to her. But so let me just go ahead and get to the last bit of this. Okay. So, okay, I took her down. Okay, cool. All right, so listen, here's the last little bit before I get to Danielle Goodrich. I hope you stuck around so you can get your 15 seconds, okay? But before I do that, you guys remember I did a really long live about Sean Oceanbine. He's an ER physician that has linked up with Turning Point USA, that has linked up with Tennessee Stands and the Freedom Matters tour, which he's no longer on that tour. But he was giving all of these speaking engagements around COVID-19, and all of them are pretty much the same. He couldn't stay in the dugout any longer because of what he saw concerning COVID-19. And he says something that the first time I heard it, I meant to play it for you guys and forgot to load it. So tonight I wanted to make sure, and it's a very short clip, but I want you to hear what he says about them treating patients with COVID back in March and April of last year and putting them on ventilators. Listen to what he says.
First time. And I'll tell you when the first time I realized that I could not stay silent any longer. And that was in the emergency department when we had COVID patients coming in. And we knew that if we put these patients on a ventilator, they had a 95% chance of passing away. Right? We knew that at that time, but we were doing it anyways.
So he just said that when he was in the emergency room and they had COVID patients coming in who were sick, he said that they knew at that time that if they put those COVID patients on a ventilator, they had a 95% chance of dying, and they, quote unquote, did it anyway. That's what he said. I love you so much. I just now saw your text message, ma'am. Yeah. So, oh, I'm not Ginger Carter. She's gone already, but hold on. Okay. So, well, actually, so Jamie, I believe he was talking about back then. So I believe he's talking about when he was still at Wake Forest. I'm not sure when he left Wake Forest and came to Ballad, but he's an ER physician with Ballad Health right now. And his statement is that if a patient comes in and they are sick with COVID-19 and they put them on a ventilator, there's a 95% chance they're going to die, and that they're doing it anyway. That sounds like medical malpractice to me, the way he says it. I'm sure that it's not, I would like to think, but I am listening to the way he said that and I'm like, really? Okay. I want to give you this piece, and then I'm going to give you this piece before we go. Okay. So listen. So this is from an article, and Indiana University has required students to be vaccinated against COVID-19, and 8 students, and he was speaking at Higher Ground Baptist Church. Yes, that was Sean Oceanbine at Higher Ground Baptist Church, which, by the way, those of you guys who are friends with Bud Halsey, tell him that I watched his speech there too. And I got to give him credit. He did give some good information about how laws work and all of that sort of thing, and how to contact your legislator. Although, Bud, you never replied back to me. You did give some good information, but there were some claims that you made, Bud, with regard to social justice issues, and with regard to some other things about the founding fathers, and with regard to listen, I have a whole sheet for you, Bud. I'm coming back for you later. You just haven't been worth my time, but I'm coming back. I'm going to get to you. So listen to this. So 8 students recently challenged Indiana University's requirement that students be vaccinated, right? And their lawyer claimed that the requirement violated their right to, quote, bodily integrity and autonomy. And the federal judge, Damon Leckie, appointed by Donald Trump, upheld the requirement. This is a Trump judge, a Trump-appointed judge, who said, no, the university has the right to require you to be vaccinated. And listen to what was said. Yes, Luann, he is. And it says he ruled that in this situation, public health concerns outweigh individual rights. And an even better basis for the judgment might have been that although people may have a right to bodily integrity and autonomy, they don't have a right to be students at Indiana University. Right? Holy geez. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? So sure, you have your right to bodily autonomy and bodily integrity, but you don't have the right to eat at a certain restaurant. You don't have the right to be a student at that university. You don't have a right to shop at that clothing store. You don't have a right to do those things, period. So get this, the decision will probably be appealed, but this is what this individual says. He says, but in my opinion, it will continue to be upheld. And he says, in the meantime, we need to think about a much stronger measure requiring everybody with appropriate medical exceptions to be vaccinated. Now, merely mentioning this possibility will naturally invoke libertarian outrage, my body, my decision, although that never applies to pro-choice issues, right? Warnings of the danger of an all-powerful government, right? And impassioned invocations of the right to freedom, give me liberty or give me death, right? But this is what he says. In the current pandemic, slogans like liberty or death have an ironic edge. Liberty and death, right? Death for whom? Vaccine objectors don't just run their own risks. They could infect vaccinated people who are immunocompromised. Hi, how are you? And children not yet legally eligible for vaccination. Hi, my grandkids. Also, the more people infected, the greater possibility that an even more dangerous mutations will develop, perhaps one resistant to current vaccines. This is why vaccinating everyone on the planet is not just the humane thing to do, but it is vital to protect Americans. Now, I want to address something really quickly. How many of you guys have seen these headlines, typically from very right-wing media outlets, that are saying things like, the WHO is saying no to vaccine boosters, but Biden is saying yes? How many of you guys have seen those headlines? Because I've seen several. Those headlines are meant to indicate that somehow Biden wants people to get vaccinated when the WHO doesn't, right? You've seen it, Melinda? Okay, I have too. Now, let me just tell you, if you do a little bit of digging about what the WHO is saying, right? The World Health Organization is saying. Here's what they're saying. The reason they are objecting to a booster shot here in America for people who are already vaccinated is they are saying that more impoverished countries around the world don't have enough vaccines for people who aren't vaccinated at all yet. And the World Health Organization is saying that giving booster shots to people who are already fully vaccinated when there are other people who do not have access to the vaccine currently is making the vaccine a matter of privilege, right? And making it almost like an economic disparity issue from one country to the next. It is not that the WHO is saying, oh, it's not a good idea for you to get a third shot or a booster shot. What they're simply saying is, don't go back for thirds because these people haven't eaten first. Do y'all get that? I know y'all should get that reference. I'm a Southern girl. You know, when your mama won't let you go back for second and thirds because, so-and-so hasn't had their first plate of food yet. That's what the WHO is saying. They are saying, listen, don't go back for third dibs on the vaccine because all of these people right here haven't even had their first plate yet. That's what they're saying. They are not saying that getting a booster shot is not a good idea, that we don't need them. They are not saying that the Biden administration is trying to push a vaccine on people that we don't need. That is not what they are saying. And it is so misleading. And to me, because we are talking about a global pandemic, in my opinion, it's criminal. It is criminal for people to run headlines like that, in my opinion, or it should be criminal. Let me say that. It should be criminal to use headlines like that because people don't read. All they click on is the damn headline, or all they do is share the headline. And that a lot of the people that do read only read on a 4th, 5th, and 6th grade level, so they don't even read that deeply anyway, right? It should be criminal to spread misinformation like that for political purposes or to sow discord or whatever. I just really do believe that. So this article goes on to say, listen, this is a really good argument. This is what I love, legal arguments. So listen to this legal argument really quickly, and then we got to go. All right. Some people say that compulsory vaccination is unconstitutional or that it would be, right? But legal history does not support that. Legal history does not support that. Mandatory vaccination would stand on firmer constitutional foundations than military conscription, which is itself a prime example of government denial of bodily integrity and autonomy. The military draft suffers from 3 major constitutional objections that do not apply to mandatory vaccination. Now, this right here, these are for my law geeks, my people that really want to talk, not you people that just want to spew about the Constitution and have no damn idea what you're talking about. We're going to be talking about this. So listen, first, the 13th Amendment prohibits not only slavery, but also involuntary servitude, right? Although the courts have claimed that a draft does not constitute involuntary servitude, it is hard to imagine that any servitude that is more involuntary, right, than a draft. There are no words in the Constitution which suggest mandatory vaccination would be prohibited. No words. Second, the military draft applies only to a minority of the population selected on grounds of age and sex. Well, this is hardly equal protection of law, right? If the draft applies because of age and sex, then that's discriminatory, right? Requiring everybody to be vaccinated would avoid the inherently arbitrary choices that government must make in determining specific individuals who would also be drafted. So that's number 2. That's why mandatory vaccinations are actually more constitutional than the draft. Third, it is possible to attain the goal of conscription, a robust national defense, by less drastic means, namely an all-volunteer armed force. But it may be impossible to achieve herd immunity from COVID unless a very high percentage of the population is vaccinated, a percentage which might be elusive if vaccination is not legally mandated. Could a legal requirement get through Congress? We may find out. If Congress does not act, we will just have to wait for states, localities, employers, universities, industries, blah, 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 to impose vaccination requirements, right? This could eventually create herd immunity, but some states might not only refuse to do it, right, but try to prohibit lower governments and private organizations from doing so, right? Ironically, reducing their freedom. So listen, the bottom line is when people say it's unconstitutional to require mandatory vaccinations, you're actually legally wrong from a legal historic perspective. No, and people who know the law and people who know history and study it, imagine that they're actually experts on it and not just repeating like talking points. They actually know that, right? Third, I want to talk about something really, really quickly. So do y'all remember seeing this billboard in Kingsport, Tennessee? I mean, in Johnson City, there was one in Kingsport too, but it's from Tennessee Stands. Your compliance is prolonging the nightmare, ditch the mask, TennesseeStands.org. Do y'all remember this? So this article is from the Federalist, and these folks were interviewed after seeing these billboards go up. Yep, you saw that too? Great. So, and I want to just say this. I have actually seen some local politicians from back home in Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia sharing this Johnson City Freedom Group, sharing this Tennessee Stands Coalition stuff. Make no mistake, I do not care who you are. Let me say this emphatically. I do not care who you are. I will still come for you on this issue as a local politician. It will not be personal, but it may be the first time you find yourself on the other end of one of my lives. Okay, here we go. So, Tri-City Director Danielle Goodrich led the effort in the 3 cities where these billboards went up. She founded the group Johnson City Freedom to try and get kids in school, in person for school during the pandemic, right? She told the Federalist, that's the article that I'm reading, that Americans, and this is where I got pissed. And Danielle, this quote right here is what earned you a spot in tonight's live. She told the Federalist that Americans should not have to, quote, bow down to these absurd, slavish, and oppressive rules, which the government doesn't have the authority to do. I need to say that again. I need to say it again. She told the Federalist that Americans should not have to, quote, bow down to these absurd, slavish, and oppressive rules, which the government doesn't have the authority to do. Listen here with your lily white privileged ass to make the comparison that wearing a mask is slavish. Do you know the kind of masks that slaves had to wear? Do you know the contraption that was put on my ancestors' skin, that in the blazing hot degrees like ripped their skin off their face? Do you have any idea what slavish oppression really is? Because I promise you, it is not asking your ass to wear a mask. This is what I mean. When you all don't understand why Black and brown and indigenous people say the same people hollering about masks, hollering about being oppressed, that you're also racist as hell, this is why. Because you say stupid shit like this. That's why. And the thing is, this was unprovoked. You didn't have to say this. What does that tell me? That tells me that this is really what you think and believe as a human being, as a person. This is really who you are, because this was an unprovoked, just, hey, asking you what you think about wearing a mask. And the best way that you thought to describe being asked to wear a mask or having mask mandates was to correlate and compare it to slavery and oppression. But I'm not supposed to think you're racist. I'm not supposed to think you have covert white supremacist. I'm lying. They're not covert because you just did it overtly, right? It's not covert. It's overt. But I bet you money if I was to say, Danielle Goodrich, I believe you are racist. If I said that to you, you would be offended. But ma'am, this is what you said. If you all do not believe that there is a link between right-wing rhetoric and anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers and anti-critical race theory people and racism, you are mistaken. You are foolishly ignorant, willfully ignorant, unwilling to see what is right in front of your face. I would bet money on my life Marsha Blackburn doesn't even know what the hell critical race theory is. And yet she sat up there and put out a Facebook post 2 days ago that said critical race theory, it does not belong in schools. Really? Because all that critical race theory is history told from multiple lenses and perspectives. Because I promise you that Native Americans, their history of Thanksgiving is not the same as what you teach in schools. Right, Aunt P, it's buzzwords. It really bothers me how many of you all will act like, oh, well, that's not what she meant. That's what she said. She said, Americans should not have to bow down to these absurd, slavish, and oppressive rules, which the government doesn't have the authority to do. Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. And you think this is patriotic. You think you're actually standing up for something. You think you're really showing like American pride and we're going to keep them from running all over us. And the truth of the matter is you are privileged beyond belief. You are woefully, willfully tone deaf and ignorant when it comes to racial issues, racial disparities, racial injustice, social justice issues, the plight and the experience of Black, brown, and indigenous people in this country. You have no clue. But yet you're a Christian. You know. Right, Teresa. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. And I believe you. I believe you. I believe you. Listen, one of my other favorite doctors, I say that facetiously, Dr. Denise Sibley, in this same article, she says that maskers are, quote, a symbol of control rather than that masks are a, quote, symbol of control rather than they are a medical intervention, end quote. She says, quote, this is all part of COVID theater. So if you want to wear it for your theater, that's fine, but don't make everyone else see a new show. That is from a doctor, Dr. Denise Sibley. All of it goes together for me, folks. I believe that you doctors are dangerous. I do. That's just the way that I feel. I believe the evidence shows that you're dangerous. I think that many of the people who are joining these things and hiding behind what you're calling liberty and your patriotism, it's just the new Confederacy. That's all it is. That's all it is. Yeah, I was angry when I read her calling it slavish. I was angry. The fact that I have heard so many white people compare masks and mask mandates and things like that, to, the Holocaust and to slavery and to all of these really horrendous things, tells me that you have absolutely no clue of what those people experienced. And that, my friends, is exactly why we need critical race theory to be taught in schools. Because maybe if you had learned differently in school, you wouldn't be spewing ignorance today. Right. This is the new Confederacy with the same foundational beliefs, hiding behind it's the same thing as saying states' rights when you really meant slavery. That's what you meant. That's what you said. And I believe you. Don't know you as a person at all, and don't have to. And get this, do not want to. Do not want to at all. Because what I know is anyone who says those types of things out loud, but then again, I'd rather you say them out loud, because here's my opinion. My opinion is that when you solve issues with laws only, you do not actually change anything, because it's up to the men and women who observe and enforce those laws to do them and uphold the spirit of the law. And what we know is the spirit of laws are oftentimes not upheld. And until you change the hearts and minds of people, laws don't really matter. Right? So, yeah. I will say this. There are people back home that I love and that I miss dearly. And I am so glad I left again. So glad. I would not want my grandchildren to experience what I experienced growing up there. And people say, yeah, but if everybody keeps leaving, then it's not going to change. I have no desire to be your martyr anymore. And I don't want my grandkids to be. So yeah, if you are a politician and I see you promoting this nonsense, I'm calling you out. I don't care who you are. So be like Mark Vance and go ahead and block me now. Okay. All right, folks, that's it. That's all I got. I appreciate you guys for hanging in. I will be uploading a new podcast episode tonight. I will be live again on Monday at 8 p.m. Maybe before then. I'm going to have the grandbabies soon. Yeah, they do define. So I agree with you. They define boundaries of acceptable behavior, right? But but are they enforced that way? Right? Are they enforced that way? Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. I know, guys, listen, I said this, if you watched my live earlier today, y'all know that I get passionate. When I get passionate, I can get very colorful in the way that I speak. And earlier today, someone said something to me trying to police my tone and my language on my live. And I very quickly shut them down. And they reached out to me afterwards and asked me, what was that about? And told me that, prior to today and prior to that interaction, that they had liked me and that they liked me when I was outside of Holston Valley and they had brought us water and all of this. And I said, see, that's the thing. You liked me when I was doing something for you, right? You have now had one interaction with me that you didn't like the way that I responded to you. And yet you all don't count how many times I don't like the way that you respond to me. You all act like I'm just supposed to keep taking and taking and taking and taking the stuff that's dished out, and I'm not supposed to sit you down. And guess what? Those days are over. You don't have to like me. I will still advocate for you. I will still fight for you. If I believe that what you deserve are your human rights and your health and well-being, you don't have to like me for me to do what I feel is in my heart the right thing to do. And I will not cater to you just so that you can follow me. Follow me, don't follow me. I held my tongue a lot of times back then, Jamie, and I'm not doing it anymore. I believe that we are in a time of massive change. let me just say this and then we'll go. I believe that we are in a time of massive, massive change. And people know it. And people know that if we are going to see a shift in the way that things have always been in this country, and what I mean by that is in the United States of America, things have always been white, patriarchal, heterosexual, led. Those are the three standards. Oh, let me just say this: white, patriarchal, heterosexual, and hiding behind Christianity. Those have been the four pillars of things in this country for a long time. And what I believe is that those pillars do not represent the people of this country. And the people using those pillars most oftentimes don't even believe in them and live them themselves. If I judge you by your fruit, you do not bear the fruit which you claim to have. And so I know that people are saying, we don't want this anymore. People that we love, people that we care about, deserve to have and live freely in this country, and freely in this world. And people are willing to do what they need to do to create something different. My hope is that I get to be a small part of that. Like, that's my hope, is that I get to be a small part of that. And I do it with a balance of two things. I do it with a balance of in your face, call you out on your shit, hold you accountable for what you say and do, and sharing with you that the way that we get through this is through being connected to each other, through getting connected to the source of everything for all of us, and coming from a place. So here's what I understand, though. Some people I will be able to reach with love and compassion and empathy and connectedness. Some people I will be able to reach in that avenue, and I am here for those people. And some of you will not get it until you are exposed for who you are and what you're doing. And I'm happy to oblige on that respect as well. So just think of it like this. One day I'm giving out fishes and loaves. Another day I'm turning over tables in church. And no, I'm not Jesus, but I'm just giving you an example. Okay? And you might say, well, those things don't coexist. Oh, they did. They did, and they still do. I can love you and still rebuke you at the same time. I can still love you and say, no, what you are doing is wrong to people. I can still love you and not like you. I can love your human beingness and the core of who you are and not like you as a person. See, I'm thinking about certain people and they made my nose snarl up. I can still do that. Right. I'm a lot of peace and love and a little bit of, yeah. And that's okay. I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with who I am. So hopefully you guys, listen, we have to figure out something to do about doctors who are spewing dangerous misinformation. We have to do that. And I'm not sure the answer to that, but we must. And so I would once again encourage people to write letters to the editor, write letters, send opinion pieces in, let your local media outlets know what you think of these physicians. Let them know what you think of institutions like ETSU and Ballad Health saying that they publicly disagree with these physicians, but that they can't do anything about it, when in reality they can, right? When in reality they can. If you are a physician in the Tri-Cities region or in the Ballad Health Service region and you lose your privileges at Ballad Health, yeah, that means something, right? You can't practice. Not at their hospitals, right? That means something. So that's the conundrum of having a medical monopoly, right? Well, now you got one, and maybe they'll start to use their position in a better way. So that's it. That's all I got. El Miney, I haven't gotten a chance to tell you yet, but my deck, remember the deck when we were out in the canopy and I had started to draw and then I designed the cards, the meditation and mindfulness cards. And you remember the card where I added your shape in with all the other shapes? I sent them off yesterday. Actually this morning, because I got the guidebook done. And the first set of decks will be in September 1st. Whoop, 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 whoop. So yeah, anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Y'all, I'm gonna get out of here. I got a phone call to make. Be amazing, be light, be love, be safe, social distance. No, don't social distance, physically distance, physically distance, and be good to each other. That's the only way we're going to get through this. Okay. Be amazing. Be light. Be love. Peace.